What is real? And real is simply electrical signals interpreted by your brain.
You want answers? I think I'm entitled. You want answers? I want the truth! You can't handle the truth!
Open your mind.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Conversations on the Fringe. I am your host, Jeff Spike Wong, and today on Conversations, we have a fantastic guest. She is the creator of Project Camelot, and she is probably one of the most, I would say, groundbreaking investigative reporter, researcher, journalist of our time, because the amount of work that I've followed and have seen her do in the last 2 decades, I haven't seen anything comparable to it. So without any further ado, let me go ahead and introduce Kerry Cassidy. How are you today?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
I'm fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us for the conversation. So let's let the conversations roll. I know everybody's been waiting and excited about it. One of the things that you and I kind of touched base on before we get this going is about whistleblowers. So can you bring that up and kind of start us with that?
Sure. So I've been doing this for around 20 years now, and just want to say that I wanted to focus a little bit on how whistleblowers are being sort of treated differently. There are 2 standards of behavior from the deep state, really, but even the White Hats, possibly the Trump administration. I'm not sure what is going on behind the scenes, who's handling the whistleblower testimonies, and why some whistleblowers are being treated well and given sort of carte blanche, and other whistleblowers, and also goes for hosts. Some hosts are being given opportunities, and other hosts are being kept out of the game. So I actually am in the latter part of the hosts. Even though I don't know if you want to call it risen to the top or whatever it is, I do have an audience, but it's a good thing I have an audience from the past. Otherwise, they might have been able to sort of lock me out a lot easier. And so, I'm still slugging away over here. And I just want to say that there are 2 specific whistleblowers I would focus on right now, but there's really many, and everyone might have a different story. So first of all, there's Grush. David Grush, and everyone probably knows that name if you're familiar with this subject matter.
David was an Air Force.
Yeah, that's correct. And actually, I should get this up a little higher. But anyway, I everything is sort of in disarray here in my place. Sorry about this, because I had one of my computers was broken, and I took it in, and then when you bring it back, you think everything will be fine, but of course it's not, and that camera is not hooked up somehow. I have to push the right button, so I've got this haphazard thing in the background. Sorry about that.
No problem.
Anyway, to get back to the subject, so David Grush is, well, I guess we basically say that Jeremy Corbell and the journalist who is with him, who I got his name is always drawing a blank, but he's a very well-known journalist. The 2 of them are a team on these broadcasts, and I guess I sent you the link, right?
Yes, and I watched that video. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So, did you get the? Let me see if I can get his name right offhand because I really hate going forward without the name.
Sure, sure. Let me see if I can
I guess I'm
pull
just
it up
not
too as well.
organized enough here for all of
Yeah.
this.
For those of you watching, just so you know, this was an incredible video. Jeremy Corbell, right? And
Mhm.
he was doing basically a breakdown of David Grush, and the gentleman he was with, what is his name? George Knapp,
That's it.
right?
Okay. So yeah. So
Oh, we lost Kerry. Well, we're going to have to get her back. So let's just wait a second. So basically, Corbell and Knapp had basically a podcast, really digging deep regards to David Grush and who he was and the kind of disclosure he had with Congress. I mean, these are things I remember reading, but I remember thinking to myself, okay, here's another guy that's going to come in that's going to say things that we already knew, or it's not going to tell us enough. Because usually when we get into this UFO disclosure thing, that it kind of just, it seems like, oh, you're telling me the same story that I already knew. Similar stuff like, the Roswell or the lights over in Arizona. It never seems to ever break that bubble. And that's the part that drives me nuts. Because if you've been around this ufology, or they call it UAP now, I mean, come on, you can spin it any way you want. Something is going on. Something shows up in our reality, and often in crafts, in different shapes, different things on this craft. There she is. Let me get her back on the stream real quick. Hey, there you are.
sorry about that. So what I was trying to say here is David Grush is a whistleblower. He was mainly went forward in the early UAP hearings. And so what happens is he was then, I guess, harassed. He was, someone leaked out that he had seen some, I don't know what you call it, but doctors or something about PTSD.
Hmm.
And that's common in military people who, do actually very strenuous, frustrating, difficult missions and then carry over from there. So a very close friend of his was him on the phone and committed suicide after hanging up. And
Hmm.
that upset him a great deal. And it was something he had trouble processing as a military guy. So that really hit home. Obviously, it wasn't a stranger, it was somebody close to him.
Wow.
And that's understandable. But the
Right.
the press took it the wrong way and blew it up
Hmm.
and tried to make it affect the veracity of his testimony at the UAP hearing.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
this is what goes on. And in that case, some dark side of the CIA or whatever organization was
Mhm.
behind all of this, having to do with the secret space program and their efforts to keep, on the one hand, have disclosure, on the other hand, not to allow disclosure and to mess up disclosure as best they can,
Hmm.
which is also going on right now with Three Eye Atlas, and we can dive into that if you like after this.
Absolutely.
But
Yeah.
so I had been focusing on another whistleblower called Borland,
Mhm.
Dylan Borland, who's a more recent he testified also at the UAP hearing, but the more recent one. And so we've had 3 UAP hearings that I recall. Okay.
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
think that's 3.
Yeah.
So over the last 3 years. So
Right.
Borland, all he did was see a UFO, believe it or not, fly over his base. So he supposedly didn't have any missing time, but of course we don't know.
Mhm.
But he doesn't think he did. All he did was see it. I think it was a triangular craft, and he just flew very low over the base where he was living. He shared that with some of his, you know, a fellow officers, or not officers, but military
Okay.
guys anyway. And the word got back to the higher levels, and they brought him in and eventually fired him. But first they tried to mess with him, took away his certain, I don't know, badges, whatever. And then they also shifted him from the United States military to what's called BAE, which is British aerospace.
Interesting.
Kind of, a very strange lateral move, which was, I guess, designed to put him sort of ill at ease in some form or fashion, which it did do. And he persevered, though. He tried to. His story is fascinating. It's really 3 videos now. Again, with George Knapp and Jeremy Corbell interviewing. So I just want to say that these 2 cases are really interesting. And then there's a third case. I'm not going to name the person.
Okay.
But I met the person in person. And he's a military guy. Okay. He's doing disclosures that are the most outlandish disclosures. So you would think the person who just saw a UFO, like, why would they even interfere with his life? I mean, that's just harmless, right? Grush is another matter altogether, but he was an intelligence agent. He was decorated. He's impeccable credentials and everything else under the sun. Even Borland has impeccable credentials as well. So then this other one, who I'll just call Jay for just a use of a name. So this person, he's basically been given a sort of a red carpet, and they, he got interviewed a number of times by a well-known person. He got books written about him. He got like the whole 9 yards as far as sort of being covered in the media, okay, and access to media. And that continues to this day. So it's uncanny. Now, I would like to interview Grush and Borland. And of course, if anyone knows them and sees this video, maybe they can get word to them. But I have also tried to interview a number of whistleblowers, but they won't let these people talk to me. So any military whistleblowers coming out now are not allowed to talk to me because I'm considered to be too dangerous to talk to.
You're right.
And I've been told that. Yeah. Because I actually follow the dots. And when I ask a question, I don't let the person just slide with some kind of answer and just, kiss their ass. I actually delve into sort of all aspects of it. And so that shouldn't be a problem. Sort of hair. Anyway. Yeah. So that's the story with the 3 whistleblowers and how differently they're being treated. One is also getting plenty of, I guess, financing. He is locked down in the sense that he's working for them as a disclosure witness. And that's, in other words, that's a military sponsored disclosure, right? Yeah. Yeah. So then you go over to the Sean Ryan's show, where Sean Ryan is doing a good job, but he's basically doing exactly what I've done for 20 years for a much shorter time. And not sure that's really his background as a journalist, but he's become one. So
well, I think he somehow got onto the platform, and I think the powers that be decide to make him.
Right. Well, whatever, however it happens, I'm just I brought him up because he is a person who has been in the CIA. I think he says that openly. I think he tries to say he's retired. He's probably not retired. You never retire from those agencies, as you may know. Yeah. And I know several agents that would probably back me up on that. Yeah. So I'm just trying to show people how this playing field that they think is equal, where it's just we're all equals, and there are people that are broadcasting, the broadcasters or influencers, whatever you want to call us. And then there are the so-called whistleblowers. many of whom are not even whistleblowers at this point.
Right.
Some have military backgrounds, some have documented backgrounds. Other people just say they were in the 20 and back,
Right.
situation, and that's all you have to go on. Their word of mouth, I guess.
Right.
So I'm just saying that this is a very controlled.
Mhm.
People are not treated fairly on either side of that spectrum,
Mhm.
and so it's tilted, and so people are getting the wrong impression. I think by and large, they don't know who to really focus on,
Yes.
and the ones that the military give some kind of strange access to
Mhm.
are not actually. We don't even know if how much truth there is. Okay, and then so there's always the looking for the actual truth.
Right. Right. I
So,
think. Well, I think there's a big part of this disclosure with whistleblowers that they seem to be allowing to tell us technology, and maybe just the surface of top two tiers, and that's really it. But when they start to tie into certain spirituality of it or certain history out of it, they seem to, oh no, let's not go there. You know, so I noticed there's a gate, if you will, that stops that. And your hard work for the last 2 decades with Project Camelot has touched so much across the board that I think that's the reason why they went, we can't really let her in because she will open the entire door. And that's going to absolutely change the entire dynamic of humanity.
right, and what's coming forward right now actually is there was some outing today, I think it was, on the Richard C. Hoagland news group, but it was also out there somewhere in the media
Mhm.
where a certain group of people, I don't think we know their names, are coming forward saying that things in terms of really SSP, but they're not calling it that, of course, because no one will touch that name, Secret Space Program, even
Right.
though we've been even having conferences with the name
Yeah.
for many, many years and having, whistleblowers on stage and all of that. Not just me, but many people. So there's a whole contingent of people that know that name, know what it entails, and so on and so forth. But there are lots of people who will not use that name whatsoever,
Mm.
even on like the Richard Hoagland news group.
Mm.
Either they're in complete denial or they know the name and they have signed a security, a non-disclosure agreement, so they're not allowed to say the name. But it's really fascinating when you get down to it because they don't want you to know,
Mhm. Mhm.
for some odd, insane reason, that Space Force is part of the secret space program. And that was Trump's effort to put sort of you might say, a leadership or to centralize
Mhm.
the leadership of the SSP. But the SSP has been operating underground, basically, and off planet,
Yeah.
and doing things with technology that is, according to my whistleblowers, who a lot of them have spent most of their life in the SSP, say it's 10,000 years in advance of where we are on surface Earth.
Mm.
So this is what we're dealing with. We're dealing with a huge cover up. There's always been a cover up in the
Yep.
UFO sort of
Yep.
situation, but this cover up that's kind of like newly formulated in the midst of a so-called era of disclosure of some kind is a whole different ballgame.
Yeah.
But the bottom line is, if you go back to William Tompkins, who
Mhm.
was a very old timer, having been in the secret space program, really 40 years or more, most of his life, I think more than 40 years,
Mhm. Yeah.
because he was actually recruited as a young man,
Right.
I think around the age of 17 or something.
Yeah.
So, and he was, when I interviewed him, I think it was 93, something incredible.
Right.
Totally wide awake and very aware and everything. Just shortly after that, when he was going to do the second interview with me, he died, supposedly falling down a set of stairs.
Right.
Now, whether he's actually dead or not, so we have these situations going on with false flags, Charlie Kirk, false flag, and other things that have happened along the way. North Carolina, that appeared to be some kind of an attack on underground North Carolina and having to do with the child trafficking in the area. That went silent since then.
Yeah.
But this is what the original information that came out was, that that area was actually a center for child trafficking, sadly.
Mm.
And it just, the list goes on. So what I'm trying to say here is that today there was an outing to a degree, supposedly, of this secret surveillance network that is actually, when you read about it, it sounds like child's play. It's nothing like the sophistication of the secret space program. But it is a group of people who think they're outing the idea that we have surveillance set up already back in like 2005, which of course we have surveillance going back to really the time of the Nazis and even before. But after that, we have Solar Warden that patrols the space, here in secret space in our solar system, as well as other organizations that go from a variety of names and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
So as a person who spent a lot of time investigating all of this, it's very concerning. It's disappointing. And it actually is kind of it's a sort of a slow moving tragedy, because even in the midst of disclosure, we get falsities coming out. And so now there are false pictures of Three Eye Atlas that were put out by this group that supposedly was latecomers to surveillance, I guess is the best I can do for them in terms of description. But and I wish maybe I should have pushed this interview for to next week, simply because of this computer.
No. You're giving us a lot of gold nuggets, and I'm going to start asking you questions in regards to this. When you're saying surveillance, we're talking about watching us on planet humanity. They're surveying us.
No, actually, watching space, watching,
so
and
looking at overall,
knowing that there are incoming craft. So when you get into the Three Eye Atlas information, what you have to keep in mind is that we have been surveilling our space, and that, the whole point of having a space force or even a secret space organization, which is building colonies off planet, making deals with alien races, having every kind of interaction that you can imagine, making deals with these races on who they can abduct and who they can't abduct. In other words, making all the decisions for the public that the public should be involved in, that a portion of the UN, a secret portion of the UN, is involved in. And I know this through several whistleblowers that have told me this, where they have meetings in Exeter, in England, for example, and in Peru. And when you see there's an earthquake in Peru, for example, you can bet that there was probably a general ET meeting. And these are ET meetings that have ETs from all over the galaxies. So what we're being told is just a pack of lies in terms of disclosure. But even if it was something, even if these people could just say to them, realize that we're not alone, that would be a huge gain for their opening their minds and seeing more about the multiverses out there. But then you get the white hats that are relatively recent on the scene, and sadly, they don't want people looking at space either. And I've been told, they don't want me to talk to anybody, and they've shut me down in numerous ways. And behind the scenes, even had some of my fellow journalists been told not to interview me. I mean, this is the kind of thing that is going on, I just want to say. And it's time that somebody tells you all what's going on and the games that are being played. Okay. So
what are the lies that they're spinning on this topic?
Well, I mean,
or misdirections. There are things
yeah, there's a lot,
yeah.
but let me also say this. For example, one more example is there's a whistleblower called Michael Herrera,
Mhm.
who I wrote a Substack interview about, who he and a group of his fellow military officers or whatever were on a patrol in Indonesia after this massive earthquake happened, I think it
Mhm.
was. And they stumbled on a group of military that were all, I believe they were dressed in black,
Mhm.
with no insignia on their uniforms,
Yeah.
but they had a UFO on the back of I think on the back of some semi or whatever they call those truck
Okay.
things,
Right.
and humans in cages on there in there.
Mm.
And they were being picked up from this. What happens is that the people don't know
Mhm.
is they are actually taking humans from this planet and they are transporting them
Mhm.
to other planets, to other Earth-like planets,
Mhm.
and trying to build out the human race in that way. So they have
Mm.
captured these people when they get displaced, women and children, but also some men. And
This
they're
is against their will, right? When
yeah,
they're
they know
capturing and
nothing
taking.
about it. They are their minds are basic. Either they're on drugs or whatever they do, some kind
Mm.
of
Yeah.
process in which they don't really know what's happening to them,
Right.
and then they are transported off planet. So then there was evidence because there were remote viewers that also viewed. Not only did Michael Herrera come forward to testify,
Mhm.
and he wanted to testify at the UAP hearing, but I think they prevented him from doing so. I
Mm.
believe he did do some kind of interview with, okay, what's his name? You know, uh, what's the well-known author, interviewer, the medical doctor who,
Oh, Stephen Greer.
yeah, Stephen Greer. Sorry, I just too much going on lately. So
Right.
anyway,
Yeah.
and Greer supposedly interviewed him. He then agreed to do an interview with me and then
Right.
backed out
Right. Right.
because he was gotten to and told not to do
Right.
an interview with me. So this is the kind of thing going on. And then
Yeah.
they rewrote his story, his testimony in
Mhm.
essence, it actually was published in a British newspaper.
Mhm.
So you can still find it. In fact, I have a copy of the article on my Substack. And
Fantastic. Yeah.
and I happen to know one of the guys whose drawing was used in the actual article for what it's
Mm.
worth. And the thing is that the testimony, the part about the humans going off planet, of course, is not there.
Mhm.
And I
Mhm.
think even the UFO somehow is no longer there. I mean, the whole story like changed and got whitewashed,
Right.
basically. So no one knows about it in
Well, let
essence.
me ask you this. With this so-called kidnapping, I mean, let's just be real here. They're taking people without their consent.
Right.
What is the earliest that you would remember in any kind of research and documentation that this is happening? Because as I'm growing up in the 70s, my first introduction to UFO was Eric Von Daniken, Chariots of the Gods.
Mhm.
So that opened up my eyes. And then I saw something when I was 16 that took me even further. Then, of course, later on, I found you, David Wilcock, on and on and on. And the thing is that it never seems to, kind of give us a clear picture as the audience, if you will, to know when did this happen. I mean, we know about Tau 9 with Eisenhower, right? That came in the mid 50s. But I can't really fathom thinking that it started then. It had to go even beyond. Like I hear there was definitely Himmler going to Tibet looking for mystics,
Well, the
right?
Nazis were always in contact. They became in contact with the beings from Aldebaran,
Mm-hmm.
and those are the ones that contacted Maria Orsich and the the group. And that was something of the beginning in one aspect. But when you look at our history,
Mm-hmm.
you have to actually look to Atlantis to see when, in fact, Atlantis, the signs of Atlantis are found under the ice in Antarctica, which is
Okay.
why they're obsessed with it. So there was a shifting of the earth and the plates and so forth, the sinking of Atlantis, as it's called, and then it does appear to have shifted down to Antarctica. And so when you look at that, it is said that that's the last time the humans and aliens walked the surface of the earth together in some kind of harmony, peace, whatever you want to call it.
Right.
Although there was dissension back in those days, having to do with a group of populations that were outliers who wouldn't be part of the super modern high-tech cities and were still living off the land.
Okay.
And there are some holdovers from that you can see in India and Egypt where they throw out garbage. The reason those cultures do that with their garbage and don't clean it up is not because they're like dirty people or whatever you want to think.
Right.
It actually goes back to the heritage. And I think they don't even know this, but I tapped into this. That was a protest that those people did back in the day against the rulers of Atlantis. And as Atlantis became more and more dark and like a really, a totalitarian state, whatever you want to call it, and got infiltrated, they pulled away and they went into these areas where they had to live really, much more back to the land kind of thing. So what the garbage is symbolizing is their rejection of the Atlantean rulers and that society that grew up out of the infiltration. So, but to get back on the subject, it's just incredible that people don't know our history because they completely misunderstand so many things. And this is where recently 3-Eye Atlas and its symbolism going back to the Anunnaki, their occupation of our world, their effort to rule us, Anu's effort to become the what is in essence the God of the Bible. So people think they're talking about God when it's not actually God. It's actually Anu, who is vindictive, who is not a high level, enlightened being, and wanted worshipers. This whole idea of worship comes from there, and so on and so forth. So it's very important to when you take these trails back and you begin to see how humanity has been coerced and corralled into a certain kind of belief system by virtue of lies from these incoming races that had high technology, and so they were dazzled with it and that sort of thing.
Right.
So
well, in the sense of I think the confusion in our current times is because there's such a blur in the last 100 years of what happened, and it is, starting from right pre-World War I, and by the time that, let's say, in our age, coming out into the World War II, into suburbia America, then shifting into counterculture, it was extremely easy, I think, using technology such as television, such as radio, to convince us that other things didn't matter. What I really do believe is that on your research has gone deep into the spirituality along with the universe and the connection of that I believe the faction is afraid of it, because the faction knows if that curtain falls, chances are religion may take absolute backseat to everything then. And they can't do that.
Much of the religions, it is even said that, of course, some people are going to go crazy when I say this, but it's inevitable. You're going to piss someone off whenever you talk about religion, right?
Yeah, right.
But that the Muslims who follow Muhammad, anyway, they basically that it is said that the Catholic Church created that religion. Now, how they did it, I don't know.
Right.
Okay. But so take it, that's out there. Okay. So if you want to investigate it, you can.
Well, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I'll say this, and I've told this story once or twice before, that when I went to the Vatican City, I sensed dark forces
Oh yeah.
immediately. And the deeper I went into the Vatican Museum, the darker it became. And then ultimately at the last room, which is dirt floored and so forth, which is the ritual room, I've seen it in many black magic books,
Right.
but I was really surprised to see it at the Vatican City.
Exactly. Well, the thing is that, of course, the Vatican is run by reptilians, and the reptilians are a hierarchical society, and so are the Draco. So
Mhm.
there's a pecking order. It goes Draco, reptilians, Greys, who follow any group, the highest bidder, so to speak. And there are different kinds of Greys. There are just little biological life forms that
Yeah.
are basically running AI,
Yeah.
and they do whatever they're told. And there's also actually races of Greys that are different groups, and some are positively oriented towards humanity, and others
Mhm.
are part of the invasion forces that want to take over our planet and change the atmosphere. So it's more methane filled, radiation filled, and COVID was part of that change. So their
Mhm.
efforts to genetically re-engineer humanity are still in full force. And
Yeah.
there's a, what do you call it? I don't know if it's part of the Terminator series, but it's called Salvation.
Mhm.
Or what? No, there's another one called Logan. So Logan, if you've ever seen Logan, that's telling the story of the gray human hybrids and the children that are coming up through the border, and adults actually that are all gray human hybrids that
Mhm.
are being mind controlled by the grays to overrun our country and
Mhm.
take it over. It's an invasion scenario. The war in Venezuela is part of that scenario. We are fighting the grays
Mhm.
there, and probably some reptilians in the lower bases.
Yeah.
And Cuba is being invaded right now by the Greys again, just like the Cuban Missile Crisis. That was actually a Gray battle with the Greys, not anything what they talked about, didn't have to do with Russia or
Right.
anything
Right.
except,
We were learning Russia wasn't involved in a lot of stuff through our history,
yeah.
and they
So
somehow got the villain hat to sell to the rest of us. You know,
who did what?
I said, the Russians seems to be the scapegoat. They were given the hat to wear to be the enemy, and they convinced the whole generations of Americans to believe this through,
Right.
of course,
Well,
propaganda,
they're not,
movies, and so on.
yeah, they're not the enemy actually, but China is now putting missiles in Cuba and
Yeah.
underground, and they are also being run by a certain alien races that are trying to help them take over the world as well.
Mm.
So there's a huge drama going on that most people are not aware of.
Mhm.
There's a group of people, especially a lot of the younger people that are sort of new agey,
Mhm.
and they want to believe that everything is going to be hearts and flowers in the future, and that they're going to be given. I mean, some of them are even believing that Three Eye Atlas, which is an AI craft, is going to
Mm.
give them some level of uh, enlightenment or something towards transcendence and so on. This
Right.
is all complete bullocks,
Mm.
but they are being deceived, and willingly so,
Mhm.
sadly. So this is, I mean, I know we're jumping around a lot, but if you start looking at the scenario the way when I've been looking at this for so many years, and
Right.
I can see, you know, these things that have proven to be actually a lot more dark than people would like to believe. So
Oh, no
humanity is
question.
fighting a battle for our sovereignty, for our
Yeah.
freedom, for
Yeah.
awareness, for enlightenment. This
Mhm.
is an ongoing battle, and they are nowhere near completed, or we're not near the end at all.
Right. So we're not just fighting one faction, we're fighting a group, many different little pockets of different controlling factors, right?
Yes,
And
that's
and is this a competition? Because I remember hearing this being described as there's a whole bunch of non-terrestrials that is down here using this resources, and we end up being their experiments and competitions. So
well, there. we're fighting forces. It's even the Pleiadians use us as their front forward fighting force. And this is something that William Tompkins talked about. He didn't talk a lot about it, but he did make references to it that were very clear. That we have been trained in, and Pleiadians, I don't think even keep that much of a secret. In other words, they need help with dealing with the Dracos and the reptilians.
Right.
So this is where a lot of people don't realize where the Anunnaki came from. The Anunnaki started out as humanoid Pleiadians that actually, I don't know why they dropped their frequency or they went in a different direction, became rogue, as they call it. And they went and settled Nibiru, and then they were invaded by the Dracos and the reptilians and hybridized. And this is where you get this. They're actually Draco reptilian Pleiadian hybrids, and they're humanoid, most of them. Some are actually, some look more sort of reptilian than others, so to speak. And these are the beings you see carved on the temples of Iraq and Iran and Egypt.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and they, in those cases, some of these beings are holding humans on their laps, and they're always giving orders to the humans. There's a lot of that going on those temples. If you read, the pictures and all of that. So
are we developing?
We haven't been in charge of our world probably ever since we came here, and we came here from Lyra predominantly. We're humanoid species coming from Lyra.
Yeah.
And again, we've been infiltrated and genetically re-engineered by every visiting race that tries to put their own genetics into us, which is why we're a melting pot of races, really.
Right. And does that, because of that type of dynamics that we have on this planet, is this also why we have the kind of conflicts that we have with racisms and things of that nature? Okay.
Yeah. So they like you to think that we're a violent species.
Yeah.
But the reality is that initially, in terms of genetic engineering, the humans would be seeded to this planet, and then they would all die because they weren't fighting back when the reptilians came to eat them and take control of them. And so what was done, the galactics, whatever you want to call, in this case, the Galactic Alliance, who are supposed to be the ones overseeing us and on our side. This is not the Galactic Federation, which is infiltrated, unfortunately.
Really?
And so what happens is they basically ask the reptilians to contribute their genetics to us so that we would learn to defend ourselves. We would be more aggressive. And that was successful, that hybridization of humanity, so that all of us are said to have some what we call Anunnaki genes and some reptilian, and I guess that maybe the reptilian brain is part of that. I'm not a biologist, so I don't know for sure how they classify that. But at any rate, what happens is that then we started to be the ones of us that had the higher degree of reptilian DNA, which is like the Bush family, because they've documented that, and others are basically predominant on Earth and tends to be the masters of industry, if you want to call them that.
Right.
They tend to be in the pecking order, the ones that are running businesses, because they have, again, this very aggressive hierarchical set of genes that say that they have to be on top at the expense of other races. That's how they view it. That's just their training, and that's how
this, I'm sure, is the reason why they seems to be so cold-blooded, literally, and death means nothing to them.
And this is where you get royalty as well. This is the time when royalty was chosen by the Anunnaki, who first came down to rule in person and then decided to basically hybridize our races and put the ones that were have the most higher Anunnaki DNA were put into the positions of, king and queen and all of that. So the crown is symbolized of the crown chakra,
Yeah.
and it being fully activated, meaning that you are supposed to be an enlightened being if you're ruling and you wear the crown. Okay, your crown
Yeah.
is your crown chakra.
Right.
So these are all things that most people don't know. To me, this is just common knowledge, and I don't think anything
Right.
like it's no big deal. But when I talk about it, most people have no idea. They've never heard this talked about ever.
Right.
And sadly, even the yogis in India,
Mhm.
many of whom know this story and know exactly what I'm talking about,
Yeah.
don't talk. So there's this lockdown on telling humans the truth, you know.
And why do you think that? I mean, if you have the knowledge and you know, is it that the faction that if you open your mouth and become the voice, that they'll just say, well, we'll just remove you, and then we'll just keep everybody dumb
Well,
like mushrooms?
you know, yeah, they kill you. Now, Charlie Kirk is kind of an example of that because
Okay.
107
Mhm.
at least let it slip that Charlie Kirk was basically chosen to be possibly the next candidate after Trump,
Hmm.
representing MAGA.
Sure.
And so I believe that they staged his death
Mhm.
so that because the Israelis and that, which is very locked in with the Anunnaki, uh, we're going to probably take him out anyway. So they decided to, step forward and give him a chance to
Right.
stay alive, so that he can come back in the future and take his role that they would like him to have.
Well, if he comes back, don't you think at that point that everybody would go, what? And then all of a sudden that curtain will part and then the wizard
Well,
will be
it's
shown.
important to know the whole story with the White Hats and their plans.
Mhm.
So one of their plans is to out a lot of the people that have even, we're talking about rock stars and Diana and
Mhm.
all of these people that have even 107 himself, who's JFK Jr. And I've done a ton of research around that and know him. So what happens is they're in hiding. Okay. So
Mm.
they've been in hiding for all these years. At
Mhm.
some point, in theory, that was part of the White Hat agenda, was to bring all these people who, even Jim Morrison is alive, according to Sean David Morton, even talked to him on the phone.
Mhm. Mhm.
That I think Elvis Presley is probably that guy, Bob, whatever his name is.
Right.
But yeah, not hiding, kind of hiding in plain sight at this point. But at
Yeah.
any rate, there's this situation where people are, what we call suicided, or
Mhm.
fake, their death fake or false flag or whatever. So
Right.
there's reasons, purposes in history for this to happen. So it's like a historical narrative that
Mhm.
they're serving, and they don't tell you what the narrative is. They simply say, oh, someday they're coming forward. You don't know
Mm.
how it's going to happen. But
Right.
once they start realizing, even during this time when they've been arresting some people, in
Mhm.
theory, in Guantanamo or somewhere like that,
Mhm.
holding, tribunals, executing some people, and then putting clones in their places or doubles.
Mhm.
So a lot of this has still been going on. And I think in the future, when they do out all of this,
Mhm.
God forbid that they are stopped from outing it, but people will realize the real truth of our history, and that these people did not die. Some of them went into hiding, in essence, like Michael Jackson, for example.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, Michael Jackson back in the late 80s was involved with cloning facility up in Canada. And that story came out, I remember, in Southern California. And it was, I think, one time shown. It was talked about. Michael's doing this, and everybody's excited. And poof, that story was never talked about again. And I remember at that distinctive time, it's going, what is going on? Because there was other evidence, because Clinton was in office at that time, and they were showing variety of holding like camps throughout America already back then. And
Right.
so there was people that was questioning that. But the thing that really surprises me overall is that now we have somewhat understanding of non-terrestrials. we have some understanding now that the history is throughout this planet, and this planet may be even bigger than we anticipated, right? So the thing is that by already understanding this, I mean, I think if we took a poll, that there's overwhelming more than half of the society on this planet believes there's lives on other planet, other places, you know, whether it's be
Right.
in the ocean,
I mean,
underneath
I
us.
think you have to be deaf, dumb, and blind to believe we're the only only
No,
beings in the
absolutely.
world. You know, that's insane.
Yeah.
But you know, I mean, I talk to people every day that have no idea. So,
Well,
and
is
they
it
don't
because the mind control? Do you think that
yes,
they're actually
don't work it into their everyday perception of reality.
right?
So they like to put all of that over in the conspiracy bucket. And
Right.
even people that are involved in this kind of sector and know the truth, like again, Sean Ryan will say, "Oh, I don't get into conspiracies," you know, like it's a
Right.
bad thing. As far as I'm concerned, conspiracies are just a way of life. It's just when two or more people get together to plot against another group of humanity.
Hmm.
So it's just, you know, that's been commonplace in our cultures forever.
Right.
So this is always going on.
So
And
the story that came out to us, let's go back to the Tau 9 Eisenhower, that two groups came out to offer us deals. One of them was going to really change all of us. The other one was going to give us technology and swap of, bodies for humans. And this was the deal he took. I personally think that
um,
I understand he was a general in military.
technology for human abductees being abducted.
Well, right. He was supposed to be trading them. They were supposed to return them for research, and obviously they
Which, of course, they
reneged.
did not do. I
Right.
mean, other than they allowed them, the hybrids, to live if they were the right kind of hybrid for their purposes. But they also, you know, took a lot off planet, fed on them. They eat us.
Right.
They feed on our what's called loosh, you know, from our
Right.
animals and all
Can
of
you
that.
tell us a little bit more about that? I think a lot of people are really not understanding this fear factor of humanity, mind control,
Well,
and producing
you know,
loose for
this actually gets into Satanism. I mean, that's the
Mhm.
bottom line. That's why we have such a epidemic of child trafficking and satanic practices
Yeah.
that's all wrapped up into that. And that's what, you know, what ICE is actually having to deal with.
Mhm.
It's black magic. It's also taking your victim and torturing the victim so that the adrenochrome raises up in the being, and then supposedly they get killed at the height of that terror,
Right.
really. And then they say that, you know, I mean, it's horrible. So I really would rather not talk too much
Okay.
about it, but they feed on the victims at
Mhm.
that point.
Mhm.
You know, there's a very good discussion, I guess you might call it a discussion with
Mhm.
a doctor. His name is Dr. Bogner. He's on my website. He's a wonderful doctor that works with children
Mhm.
and hallucinogenics and various alternative therapies for working with children with, you know, different kinds of illnesses.
Mm. And by doing that, is he just a healer, or is he noticing there's a pattern?
Yeah, he studies adrenochrome and how adrenochrome operates.
Yeah.
Okay, adrenochrome. So what they do is they kill the child or the
Right.
human, and then they take the glandular stuff, which apparently is an aphrodisiac to the reptilians and the
Right.
Greys and Draco,
Right.
and they feed on that. But then they also take that and have now turned it into in Hollywood and elsewhere as an industry. So it's an
Mhm.
industry of adrenochrome production
Mhm.
that gets put into certain groups of beauty products, believe it or not,
Mhm.
to where humans in Hollywood get addicted to those products.
Right. Right.
And then if they have it for a while, it's basically Kundalini. If you know anything about
Mhm.
Eastern philosophy
Yeah.
and all of that, it's orgone on the west, it's Kundalini on the east. Those are just words, but
Yeah.
it's this energy that you generate, that we humans generate. naturally. When we get high, it can make us high, and it can also put us in altered states and give us superpowers at the right moment when necessary. It has all kinds of uses, but this product that which we sort of manufacture out of our bodies, and children have it in spades, older people lose it. That's why their skin ages so horribly and all that kind of thing.
Right.
So, so I call it the adrenochrome highway. It's very well understood in Hollywood and other kinds of, maybe Wall Street and various higher elite sectors. But it's important to know that some people, I believe, this is my belief, that some Hollywood stars got addicted to it before they knew what they were doing. They didn't know it came from the torture of children, for example.
Right.
And so then once they're addicted, like any addiction, they had to continue with it. And they, according to the White Hats, and what the White Hats are doing is arresting these Hollywood people that have been living off of this. Like, what's his name? Tom
Hanks?
Yeah, Tom Hanks and others.
He's so popular now, isn't he? In this circle.
Opposite of that, but yeah. So, you know, and it said there's plenty of Hollywood so-called stars that are, you know, became victimized in that world, and still are, actually. It's still going on.
Yeah. I think it's probably shrunk down a bit because of the spotlight's on it now.
We hope that the exploits of the White Hats are actually, you know, truthful, and that they really are making headway. It seems that they are. If you listen to Gene Decode, of course, he will give you a whole litany of you know, success stories along those lines. How true they are, you know, how much we can depend on them is another matter.
Right. Well, I remember at the summer of 2020 that the story came out of, I believe, 17 countries in the military movement throughout Europe. You remember that? And they went through with
17. They went through Well, I mean,
it was like a co-op effort, military wise, and they went through Europe, supposedly freeing kids or looking for what's going on. And there was a story about them going to a remote village and seizing 20 families in Switzerland. Now, of course, you know, and I both know that as neutral as it's been selling itself, it's not neutral at all up there. It's a very dark energy place. It's actually a lot of bad stuff come out of that area.
Right. Yeah. Again, the satanic. You see, unfortunately, what I have sort of tracked some of this down to the point where what it appears is that the beings from Aldebaran were probably reptilian humanoid hybrids. You know, the blonde, blue-eyed Nordic type. Those are actually hybrids, and so that was part of how they chose the Nazis and so on and so forth. So there's a whole lineage going down in that direction.
Yeah. Well, China also has a rich history of demons, of, you know, creatures that comes out of the water that eats children, you know, and this was taught to me as a kid.
Do have those stories, you know, but the reality is, of course, much more horrendous, but it's still real.
Yeah. Okay. So let me shift this a little bit to what our country, America, with the secret space program. Because I would say this. I got into ufology because, like I said, Van Donica, and I was interested. And then I saw something when I was 16. I just went, okay, this opened up the thing. But when I was in my late teens and early 20s and almost to 30, I was studying black magic because I was in the entertainment business. I was in Hollywood.
There you
go. Doing that thing.
You know all about it, right?
Yeah. So I learned a whole different trades of tools, if you will, to work and empower myself, which is a false empowerment.
Right.
So the thing is that we have all these things that just kind of leaks it out. I think they want us to kind of destroy and create our own havoc. This is why they let things like that out. But when it comes down to secret space program, where all this monies that we have from the government just kind of goes and disappears. And the only explanation they give us is, well, there was corruption with, $400 hammers and a $2,000 toilets. Just did not make sense. Right. Then later on, as let's say, 15, 16 years ago, when Ancient Alien series became the rage. I mean, literally, you couldn't get it off the TV set if you wanted to. And they start talking about secret space programs. They start talking about locking it in with history and so forth. So let me ask you this. When did you were aware that we had a so-called a program that went off planet and was doing work in other places?
Well, I guess it was gradual for me because I started like 20 years ago, but we started like with the best whistleblowers as it happened, and who told us basically as much of the truth as they could possibly manage. And in some cases they suffered for it also. Bob Dean had his daughter committed suicide. This is probably, she got suicided. And Clifford Stone, a wonderful disclosure witness, his son was killed in a motorcycle accident. So this is how they pay back members of their organization, the Old Boys Club, all of that. And when they start disclosing the truth. And that's still going on, right? So
well, the thing is, with the secret space program of using so much of our monies and not really telling us where it's going.
This is from the beginning of Project Camelot. I mean, in some ways, we were among the first that actually used video to convey a lot of this stuff. There were interviews being done in the past, even using video, but they didn't do that video online, because YouTube didn't even exist. I mean, I was with, one of the first YouTube directors. So
right.
So it's from there on that we got the testimony right away about the secret space program. Now that rumors and information and leaks had been coming out, maybe you know about the, I think it's called the Branson disclosures.
Tell us about that.
Well,
can you brief it?
Look it up in the internet.
Okay.
And that was telling a lot about the secret space program.
Gotcha.
Even the adrenochrome, the nest, the reptilian nests, and so on and so forth. I mean, it's hard to say where it started, at least for me personally, because it was like always learning and always gaining more knowledge constantly from, from at least 20 years ago and before that. And I was doing research, even, all day long, as much as I could, so it started to, the main whistleblowers like, that were out there, and even Stephen Greer, who took whistleblower testimony and then put it all in a book. He didn't, he took it on video, but he didn't release his video because he wanted his video to look Hollywood professional, which actually served us because I didn't stand on that kind of ceremony. I decided to do more of an avant-garde situation where I just place a camera in front of somebody and start asking questions. But, so there was a whole movement back in those days, and that was around, in our case, we joined the sort of fight in 2005 with Project Camelot. And I started it in, actually now it's been 20 years. So November of 2005, I guess it is.
That's a fantastic 20 years, and I wish you another 20, man. Because I tell you, I've been following your work for a long time, and I love also, you tell stories about when you were a kid growing up and how you had different things that was, brought to your attention, and you felt like you had a special power or special mindset, psychic mindsets, So that, would you consider that's like a star seed being born? Come here to assist?
An early star seed, if you want to. I sort of object to those divisions. I think they're a little bit, manufactured, so to speak. I think that humans, we're multidimensional, and time and space is an illusion. So this body, you could call it a starseed if you want, but it's all there. It's all part of everyone, even older people that don't know they're that, you know what I mean? So they haven't awakened their DNA, but that doesn't mean they don't have it. It's in their DNA. And so I was just listening to somebody say recently that the human brain really hasn't changed over history, which is kind of an interesting statement. Now, I don't know if they're right. Okay, I wouldn't necessarily think they're right, but maybe at least in terms of basic scientific things like weight and circumference or whatever, those kind of things. But I do think that we have been so hybridized that you can't, come to these conclusions with just sort of a blanket statement. You have to understand the sort of multiplicity of all of the races, of all of the different kinds of beings that have been here and are still coming here. We're being visited constantly by races from other planets.
Right.
And our secret space program is dealing with them. And we are not aware of it because most of our minions or, brothers and sisters don't want to know about it because they're afraid, I guess. I don't know.
Well, I think the fear factor is exactly what they want to feed off of. They can control the fear. If all of a sudden all of us got enlightened and started connecting to the universe, they couldn't handle it because then they would be.
That's what's happening, though. I mean, literally, that's what's happening.
Yes.
Okay. So people are being enlightened daily. And getting a grip on reality, I guess, on real reality. And I think they're joining the fray, so to speak. You were talking, I think, early in this interview about ancient aliens. Well, the fact that a show like that could make it out there. Then there was the Steven Spielberg series called Taken that was very graphic in terms of the fact that there was abductions going on and genetic re-engineering. So there has been a sort of especially Hollywood has actually contributed greatly, in my view, to making some of this stuff more palatable to many people that do pay attention to movies and television.
Right.
And they can write it off as it's all, just made up. But the fact is, it's mostly true.
Right.
So,
yeah, I was definitely told in things that I've read regards to like Star Trek's 1966, it was done on purpose. And it was made sure that it was going to show us a disclosure of human race basically working with extraterrestrials, Spock was a Vulcan.
Sure.
Right. So what I understand is that Gene Roddenberry was given this opportunity.
Given some of the information, yes.
Okay. So I mean, is that too far fetched?
I mean, we found out Arthur C. Clarke was given secret information. A lot of the authors, I think they said Philip K. Dick and other ones that go way back are all had been seeded information from what we call the secret space program to some degree to out it in popular culture. And I think what they were doing was hedging their bets towards the future because otherwise they would have a lot of catatonic crazies out there when real disclosure happened, which is where we're at right now.
Right.
But they're trying their best to completely, mystify it and lie and mix it with truth and untruth and doing what their usual games,
Right. And I think that's the key, that the controlling factions think, okay, we'll give them just a hint of truth. We'll then fill it with a bucket of lies. So now they can latch onto that speck of truth and they're going to follow it, but yet they'll never get a clearer picture. And this has been spinning us, since the late 40s, early 50s. I think television was a key factor, right? because when television became the so-called the CBS, ABC, NBC, military got involved with it. So there's
Right.
high intelligence that got into television.
And mind control.
And mind control, absolutely. 29 frames per second, you stick in a frame in that 29, and all of a sudden your brain interprets it, and you start thinking, I need to go get a soda and popcorn.
Right.
Right. So I think people need to really understand of what we actually here fighting against. What are we fighting for? Why is our government so slow at dragging their feet? Or, the old argument has always been our planet would just simply freak out. I mean, are they not giving us enough credit?
I mean, you got to understand that we're the aliens.
Okay, yeah, I buy that.
So, I mean,
Yes.
we are the aliens, okay?
Right.
They are also, our visitors are aliens, but some are more purely their own species. We're a mixture of species. I mean, this planet has been hybridized as a program, as an experiment to get these species to all learn to get along. And whether it's going well or not, I can't say, but I can say that, the fact of the matter is that this was a plan. This is a plan net. See, a lot of our words tell you the truth behind them. So this is a plan, and it's a net that you get captured in, and you're part of the plan. Okay.
Right. Yeah.
And so that's the bottom line, is that humans and humanity is a plan, and it's a planned race. It's a created race of hybridized beings.
So do you see that this is a reason why we constantly return back into this form, reincarnate?
Yes. I mean, I think I am not convinced that we have to. Okay. So I do think that we have options,
Right.
but I think that many beings are sold a narrative that convinces them that they want to complete this sort of cycle or school or whatever you want to call it, and that they want it to sort of do justice to it, so that if they did injustice to others and on earth, they want to come back and correct that. So that's at least the philosophy that we're sold. And to me, it does make some sense, actually.
Sure. Well, one thing I always try to share with everyone is not to buy into so much of the third density matrix, the circus, if you will. The lowest form of circus that we're currently dealing with, of course, is gambling, pro sports, entertainment, television, all these things that people are just mindlessly giving all their energy to and getting nothing in return.
Yes and no. So the purpose of entertainment or entrainment, or also entertainment, is that all beings, actually Mark Richards said this, he says that all beings like entertainment. They don't, that this is kind of like, it's part of the fact that we are time travelers by nature, and that we actually live multiple lives simultaneously. So it's kind of like we're just getting a glimpse into our other lives, potential lives, whatever you're attracted to, and that sort of thing. And you can, the more sort of meditation you do, the more you trip into these other realities and stuff. And you start to see that that's actually the nature of the multiverse, okay, is this fluidity that we have. And so I don't think it's all bad. I think it's a learning experience. And so I actually see Hollywood as, doing bad things for sure, promoting violence and all of that. But on the other hand, I also see it as, being a very good tool for enlightenment.
Yes, I agree. It seems to be somewhat lopsided, right? Because when you tune in, let's say, yes, no question. Especially, I think,
but then so has religion. So everything is like that,
Right. And I think that's confusing to a lot of, I would say, people that's in their teens going into 20s and maybe 30s. Okay. By the time you're 40, I think there's somewhat of a comfort zone that you start to grow into. You start to understand life a little bit better, that you're not so still chasing craziness. And they know, the faction knows that if I give you something at that young age, you're going to follow it. And I can recruit you to come over to my site. This is how the music business was. This is how the music business just basically took in so much raw talent and chewed and spit them out and gave them really nothing to it. The 1% that now we know as, superstars or legendaries and whatnot, it's only 1%, still like pro football, pro basketball and whatnot. But I fully agree with you on regards to, yeah, enlightenment does come from entertainment. And we are, I think, inquisitive and like to be
Well,
amused.
it helps creativity for imagining other worlds, because that's what we're really doing. We're it's said that humans are creators in training. So we're basically learning to be the creator,
Right.
where we come from, God, the creator, source, whatever you want to call it.
Right. Yeah. I feel that in my heart. I feel that in my connection. And that's the thing that by the time I cleaned up, and I had a rebirth at 29, just so you know, I'm 61 now. So I have first half of my life in a total dark place in a black arts. And then I have second half of my life striving for the greatest of the greatest enlightenment. And to me, that was the best balance I could ever ask for in this journey, in this so-called experience. So at this point, where what we're seeing here, I can see there's a lot of craziness that the people who are asleep, they're going to be even deeper sleeping because of the distraction just seems to be piling on. But the ones that is struggling to go, wait, this is not making sense to any of us or any of me within what is going on. I think this is why you're here. This is why I'm here. We became now the so-called the beacon, if you will, to say, no, you come look at this. Because what I would say we found out, pretty much that modern history has been manufactured. It's manufactured for the needs of the faction, not for the needs of us.
Sure.
Right?
Well, I mean, everything is actually deception.
Yeah.
In the root. But I think that there is a way to find truth, and you can figure that out through what we call resonance, which is combining the heart and the mind and getting us a real sense of what resonates. So I think that's the best way you can tell the truth from falsity.
Yeah. Trust your heart. Yes. Kerry Cassidy, I love you dearly. I think you're one of the best researchers I've ever found. And I'm not saying this because I'm talking to you. I'm saying this because I've been wanting to tell you this for years. And it's just that, for everybody out in the audience, I have no idea. 5 years ago, I'm listening to the podcast going, wow, this is great. But I could never do this. 5 years later, here we are. And I'm getting to ask questions. It's been burning inside me. And we could do this for hours. I promise you.
That's good.
One of these days, we need to do a show on Voyager, Oceana Dean.
Sure.
I think that's a fantastic path.
Yeah.
Also, all your experiences traveling through Egypt and seeing the sites, I would love for us to deep dive a little bit deeper on your personal experience on those.
Okay.
Because
I'm happy to do all of that. Yeah.
Yeah. So can you tell the audience in regards to your Project Camelot website and all the videos you have available for everyone to check out?
So what we're doing is in, March of 2021, due to the COVID sort of censorship, I was taken off of YouTube. I had a YouTube channel with 70 million viewers worldwide. I think about 360 something subscribers. And overnight they deleted my channel because Robert Davis Steele came on in a video and said one sentence. But that was what happened. And so what happened was I had already registered, because this was happening to a lot of people back then. And so I was making preparations to move my channel anyway, because it was getting tighter and tighter, and more videos were getting, strikes, as they called them. And so I was putting a lot of videos in unlisted. And so what happens is that's when I had to go bring in everything onto my website and onto what's called odyssey.com. But now we're moving all the videos into Rumble. So I don't know how far along we are, but we're definitely trying to get the whole library over there, which is probably around 3,000 videos, give or take. It's very hard to count them, and they attacked us through the years. So even my radio shows were attacked. So it's hard to know exactly how big my library is, but it's in the vicinity. And they're not all whistleblowers. There are people in all walks of life, really, that I tend to go towards any kind of conspiracy, any kind of paranormal, anything to do with, enlightenment or whatever. I mean, so I've interviewed all kinds of people everywhere. And being online, of course, where we started out traveling the world literally with a camera. Camcorder, and then that became expensive and difficult, so we had to end up doing it online, which thank God became possible around that time. So that's really facilitated having libraries of videos like people are making now. So anyway, my website is called projectcamelotportal.com. That's the main website. But you can also get there using two other URLs, which is projectcamelot.tv, projectcamelot.org. And then my website actually has sections. There's older sections, and there's the whole main one, which is the portal. So I guess, and across the top are all my social media links. So you can find my Substack, and I post to my Telegram daily. So I post things I like, things I don't like, and I also do commentary there. I post things at 3 a.m. I tend to be a night owl, so I'm up late. Or really late or in the night or early in the morning, however you want to look at it. And so hopefully people will kind of go there and watch more of the videos. It's just classic Camelot is something you must see, because if you don't have that background and you're going into this era where people are lying right, left, and center, you really could get a baseline by listening to my main whistleblowers and then extrapolating from there and seeing how likely some of the people's testimony out there really is, how much detail is there, how much is not there, and that kind of thing.
Absolutely. And you then, after seeing enough of it, you start seeing a common thread to it. You start to understand. I think your intuition actually started to kick in, and this is why I always tell the audience,
the whole time. That has actually probably saved my life and saved my ass in terms of, deception, people trying to sell you something or,
sure.
some untruth.
Yeah. In for the audience who wants to learn more, I can't encourage enough to really understand what's going on with our society, with our world, with our government, with our programs. This isn't something new. A lot of it is declassified, as a matter of fact, and quite a few. Well, it's got, I would say like MK Ultra was declassified.
Right.
For them to declassify that.
It may be declassified, but like I was just explaining at the very beginning of the interview, the people that are coming forward, even like Grush, everything Grush said, we already had whistleblower testimony on in Project Camelot years ago from that. Okay, so he's not the first one that talked about reverse engineering technology or UFOs or crashed UFOs. I mean, there was a whole crash retrieval program going on that Clifford Stone testified to all those years ago, and he had impeccable credentials. And it just goes on from there. So just want to say that you can say it's unclassified, but these people are being tortured. They're being raked over the coals. They're being discredited. They're being, their lives are being ruined. If you listen to these videos and hear what they're saying, all because they're talking about even just like a sighting over a military base. That's just insane. I mean, it's just how it's really a double standard, and they're being very hypocritical. So I guess the only way you can really narrow that down is by bringing forward the truth and not letting them get away with the hypocrisy. But the trouble is that our judicial system is completely controlled by the Anunnaki and by the, by the dark side. And
Yeah.
so it's very hard to get a straight story, whether it be about Trump, Epstein, you name it. We're
Right.
still being lied to. And I think that journalists, the job of journalists needs to be more or less a conscience for all of humanity, and to make sure that the truth gets out there.
Right. Yeah. And for the audience, to prepare for all this, what I recommend everyone do is start to take inventory of yourself, start eating clean, start go away from things like alcohol, start to breathe deeply and do breathing exercises. You need to empower and energize yourself, because
Yeah.
this is the only way all of us is going to beat this thing. We
Mhm.
are not going to do it by fear, force, or any of those things that they want us to do. What we need to do is go above and become the creator ourselves and becoming this. And this is why religion freaks out when I say things like that. But you and I both know, if you read Law of One, you got a lot of that. I noticed Voyager talks about a lot of that. So in regards to, those are things that I challenge everyone to do your research. Please don't just sit there mindlessly watching episodic TV shows, or burn your whole Sunday watching a millionaire throwing a ball to another millionaire so the billionaire can, do whatever he wants, she wants. The whole idea behind this is all of us locking and growing together. I really do believe that. So with that, I want to close with just this. I'm going to ask you this, Kerry, that with the white hats and all the things that's been going on the last few years, why are there the show with regards to the masks and the doubles and the clones and all these things? What is the purpose of that, you think, in your opinion?
Well, the trouble with their thinking, see, I think that sometimes they rely on an AI, for example, and they rely on generals who are quite old. And they also rely on some, remote viewers and some psychics and so on and so forth. So the trouble is that none of those people, for example, have my kind of background. So they don't know whistleblower testimony. You can be a general and not know the secrets of the secret space program,
Hmm.
because they're barred. They live in these silos of information where they're kept away from it.
Hmm.
So there's that. Then there's crossovers and people that know the real truth, but they don't communicate it with certain people that are not let into their club. So it's a real difficult situation that we have. I basically think that people have to share the knowledge, and take down the walls, and that
Yeah.
the white hats, unfortunately, I think that they need to. I mean, I've ranted for, I know it's the NSA reading my text
Hmm.
to Juan, for example.
Hmm.
But I have not stopped, and I go on shows and I basically talk about him, and I talk about the white hats and I've written many articles on Substack that you can read, where I'm critical of the way they have dealt with their PR, let's say, because they basically have one spokesperson, one official spokesperson, which is Juan
Yeah.
O'Savin.
Right.
And he gives these, he likes to make himself out to be some kind of religious character giving a sermon, right, of these old Bible stories that are so really old-fashioned and staid and boring. But he seems to be in love with them, and I think he's been programmed, I'm sad to say. So the trouble is that a lot of MAGA has also been programmed by the same religious dogma, which is also misinterpreting the real truth, message of Jesus, for example, which I've talked about on other shows. So these are obstacles. We have people that are supposed to lead, but they're not leading by example, and they're not leading by breaking through the lies, that they actually are buying into the lies. So as far as I'm concerned, they're actually trying to get people to be religious in the old-fashioned sense of the word, which is to be more locked down and more in a prison than ever before. So this is counterproductive to their mission, which is supposed to free humanity. So whoever thinks through, whether it's Q or it's, 107, JFK Jr. and Trump, or whoever it is, I think that they have not really done enough self-examination and done enough of breaking through the programming that they experienced as young people, the people around them. I mean, I intentionally broke through all of that because I wanted to reach enlightenment. This was my decision when I was in my teens, I guess it was. And I basically set out to do that by, meditating every day and connecting my chakras, and it worked. And I had multiple samadhi experiences and still do since then. So I say enlightenment is a journey. It's not a destination. But I don't think these people that are trying to lead us have gone down the road that I have in that sense. So they have ways to go. They're making some decisions that are not really good for humanity, in my view. I'm not saying I'm, I don't know, the expert, but I am saying that I question their decisions.
Sure.
So that's kind of what you're asking me, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I wanted to hear from you because I know you've been really close to it as well. And I believe behind exactly what you're saying, the enlightenment aspect of it is the work within ourselves that we need to do. This is why we have the Great Awakening. This is why this whole event is taking so long to come to fruition. Although it seems to be every other month there's, it's coming, it's here, it's July.
Well, they're getting constant pushback from the dark side. It's also, there can be some degree of egotism, underestimating your opponents and how long they have been in control, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And I think that we can never do that we have to be very careful not to underestimate the power of evil and what's going on here on the planet.
Right.
So it requires a special kind of leadership, a special, insight into human behavior, understanding what's really going on. But if you haven't breaking through the religious bars of religion and the lies of the reptilians and through the Catholic Church and the rest of it.
Yeah.
And they're not, there's all religions contain a lot of falsity. It's just, if you haven't done that work, then you really have to dig in and get rid of a lot of that stuff and understand, when they reinterpreted Christ's words and they want you to go through Christ to get to God, that's insane. Okay. There's so many problems with even the logic, just if you think about it. Yeah. And then they're all going around yelling, because it's written into the Bible that he's going to return. Why would you return? And, if you hadn't done a good enough job the first time, then you might come back. But otherwise, why? Were you criticizing what he did the first time? I don't believe I'm in alignment with Ashiana Dean. You have to see what resonates. I don't believe that Christ was crucified. I think that they want to crucify humanity. I do believe that's happening. Right. So it's understanding on a spiritual level that we all are going to ascend, that we all are eternal. If you have a soul, then you're eternal. You can't sometimes be eternal and sometimes not. Right. There's many aspects to understanding the deeper meanings of what these things are about. And going by this old interpretation that's written by a bunch of old men that wanted to enslave you is insane. It's just insane. It's like the epitome of insanity. Yeah. So, bending down and kissing the ground and all this nonsense, all this worship stuff, this is just insanity. A real God doesn't need you to do that. Okay.
Yes.
So I talk about these things. I know it turns people off, but what can I say? I'm going to tell the truth. Right. And I think it's time that people that are sort of piercing through the veil and seeing the real truth need to speak it. Right. And we need to stop the enslavement of humanity by religion, because it's one of the most, enduring methods of enslavement, especially of the human mind and heart.
Yes. That is well said. Thank you so much, Kerry. Because, that is the part of you that I embrace so much after seeing and listening to your work for years. And I can't thank you enough to come on and join me on this conversation. I had such, just like I said, moments of little popcorns of ideas and enlightenment coming from this. I hope we can do it again soon, because like I said, we have a lot of things we could go down that path.
I'm happy to. It's very nice to meet you.
You as well. Thank you so much for joining us on the conversation. Hey, audience, what do you say? This was a fantastic podcast, and I just wanted to wish everybody much love, much well-being. Do research, maximize your efforts and your time to self-empowerment, and not buying into just what's the easiest, because that's really what's costing all of us. And with that, any last words?
No, just the truth shall set you free. I think that was one of the best things that ever came out of Jesus.
Yes. Thank you, Kerry. And thank you, everyone out there. And we'll see you next time on Conversations on the Fringe. Be well.
Thank you.
I don't have to tell you things are bad. Everybody knows things are bad. The air is unfit to breathe, and our food is unfit to eat. I don't know what to do about the depression and the inflation. I want you to get mad.
I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass. And I'm all out of bubblegum.
People should not be afraid of their governments. Governments should be afraid of their people.
The more you fuck around, the more you're going to find out.
These people are still a part of that system, and that makes them our enemy.
We accept the reality of the world with which we're presented. It's as simple as that.
I want you to get up right now and go to the window, open it, and stick your head out and yell, "I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore!"